Sometimes a mother steps onto a stage and Simon hesitates, but when he saw what she held in her hands, his world changed forever. The envelope wasn't much to look at, just a simple white piece of paper, slightly creased from being carried in her purse for months. But what was inside would silence the most outspoken judge in television history, and remind everyone watching that some gifts transcend death itself. It was a Tuesday night taping of America's Got Talent, and the Energy Universal Amphitheater was buzzing with its usual pre-show excitement. Audience members chatted excitedly, cameras rolled into position, and the judges took their seats behind the iconic panel. Simon Cowell, dressed in his signature black t-shirt, adjusted his microphone and settled in for what he expected to be just another evening of auditions. But sometimes the most extraordinary moments arrived disguised as ordinary ones. Margaret Chen, a 52-year-old school teacher from Portland, Oregon, walked slowly across the stage. Her steps were measured, deliberate, as if each one required conscious effort. She wore a simple navy dress and carried a small white envelope clutched tightly in her right hand. The audience, sensing something different about her energy, gradually quieted. What nobody knew was that Margaret had been carrying that envelope for 8 months. Every single day since the accident that took her son David. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Terry Crews stepped forward with his usual warm smile. "Good evening. What's your name and where are you from?" "I'm Margaret Chen from Portland, Oregon," she replied, her voice steady but soft. "And I'm here because of a promise I made to my son." The judges exchanged glances. Simon leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from casual interest to focused attention. Something about the way she said "promise" carried weight that settled over the entire theater. "Tell us about your son," Heidi Klum said gently, her intuition picking up on the deeper story. Margaret's grip on the envelope tightened almost imperceptibly. "David was 16. He was everything you could want in a son. Funny, talented, kind to everyone he met. He had this dream of performing on this stage someday." Her voice caught slightly. "He used to watch this show religiously, studying every act, every performance. He'd say, 'Mom, one day I'm going to make Simon Cowell smile.'" Simon's casual posture changed. He sat up straighter, his arms uncrossing as he focused entirely on Margaret's words. "What happened to David?" Sofia Vergara asked, though her gentle tone suggested she already suspected the answer wouldn't be easy to hear. 8 months ago, David was walking home from school when a drunk driver ran a red light." Margaret paused, gathering strength. "He died instantly. The doctors said he didn't suffer, but—" She looked down at the envelope. "But I've been suffering every day since." The theater fell completely silent. Even the camera operators seemed to move more carefully, as if afraid to disturb the sacred space that Margaret's words had created. Simon Cowell, who had heard thousands of sob stories over his career, found himself unable to look away from this mother's face. "I'm so sorry for your loss," Howie Mandel said quietly. "But what brings you here tonight?" Margaret looked up, and for the first time since stepping onto the stage, she smiled. "Because 2 weeks after the funeral, I was cleaning out David's room, and I found this." She held up the envelope. "He had written a letter to this show. To you, Simon." Every camera in the building zoomed in on Simon's face. His expression had transformed completely. Gone was the confident judge, replaced by a man who suddenly understood he was about to receive something he never expected. "He wrote it 3 months before he died," Margaret continued. "He never mailed it because he said he wanted to hand it to you personally when he auditioned. He had this whole plan worked out." She laughed softly through tears that had begun to form. "He was going to surprise you." Simon's hand moved unconsciously toward his chest, as if trying to protect his heart from what was coming. "Margaret," he said, his voice quieter than anyone had ever heard it on television. "What does the letter say?" "I think," Margaret said, walking toward the judges' panel, "he should tell you himself." What happened next would become one of the most shared moments in America's Got Talent history. Margaret approached Simon's section of the judges' panel, and carefully handed him the envelope. His name was written on the front in teenage handwriting. To Simon Cowell from your future contestant, David Chen. Simon's hands trembled almost imperceptibly as he opened the envelope. The letter was written on notebook paper, the kind with the 3 holes punched on the side. As he unfolded it, he could see it was 2 full pages, written in blue ink. Would you like me to read it aloud? Simon asked, looking up at Margaret. That's why we're here, she replied. Simon cleared his throat and began to read. Dear Mr. Cowell, my name is David Chen and I'm 16 years old. I know you probably get a million letters from kids who think they're going to be stars, but I wanted to write to you anyway because you've taught me something really important. Simon's voice caught slightly, but he continued. You've taught me that being honest isn't the same as being mean. When you tell someone their performance isn't good enough, you're not crushing their dreams, you're pushing them to be better. My mom always says you're too harsh, but I think you're exactly what the world needs. The camera captured every nuance of Simon's face as he read. His usual armor of detachment was completely gone. I've been practicing my singing for 3 years now, and I know I'm not ready for your stage yet. But I will be. I'm going to work every single day until I am. And when I finally audition for you, I want you to be as honest with me as you are with everyone else. Don't go easy on me because I'm young or because you feel sorry for me. Judge me like you would judge anyone else. Simon paused, looking up at Margaret, then back at the letter. But here's the thing, Mr. Cowell, I also want you to know that behind all the tough criticism, I can see that you actually care about the people on your show. You want them to succeed. You want them to be the best version of themselves. And that's why, when I finally make it onto your stage, I'm not going to try to make you smile. I'm going to try to make you proud. The silence in the theater was so complete that you could hear the hum of the electrical equipment. Simon's voice was barely above a whisper as he read the final paragraph. I hope that when we meet, you'll remember this letter. And I hope that whatever I perform for you, it makes you believe in dreams the way you've made me believe in hard work. Thank you for making television better. Thank you for making performers work harder. And thank you for showing everyone that sometimes the truth hurts, but it also helps. Your future contestant, David Chen. Simon carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. When he looked up at Margaret, there were tears in his eyes that he made no attempt to hide. Margaret, he said, standing up from his chair, something he rarely did during auditions. This is the most extraordinary letter I've ever received. He walked around the judges' panel and approached Margaret on the stage. Your son understood something that most adults never figure out. He understood that respect and kindness aren't always the same thing. Margaret nodded, her own tears flowing freely now. He always saw the best in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves. Simon stopped just inches away from Margaret, and what he did next would change how America saw him forever. I need you to know something, Simon said, his voice carrying throughout the amphitheater without the need for a microphone. In 30 years of judging performers, I have never, and I mean never, received a letter that showed such maturity, such understanding, such wisdom. Your son didn't just want to be a performer. He was already an artist. He paused, looking out at the audience, then back at Margaret. And he was wrong about one thing. He did make me proud. Right now, reading his words, I have never been more proud of someone I've never met. The audience erupted in applause, but Simon held up his hand. But Margaret, I need to ask you something. Why did you bring this to me? What did you hope would happen? Margaret smiled through her tears. Because David's dream wasn't just to perform on this stage. His dream was to change your mind about something. He wanted to show you that young performers could be serious artists, not just kids chasing fame. He succeeded, Simon said immediately. He absolutely succeeded. But there's more. Margaret continued. David left something else. A recording. He made it 2 weeks before the accident. He said it was his audition piece for when he was ready. From her purse, Margaret pulled out a small digital recorder. He wanted you to hear it. Not to judge it for a competition, but just to hear what your future contestant sounded like. Simon looked at the device in her hands, then back at her face. Margaret, are you sure you want to share this? This is your private memory of your son. David made me promise, she said simply. He made me promise that if anything ever happened to him, I would find a way to get his music to you. He said you would know what to do with it. Share and subscribe, because what you're about to hear changed Simon Cowell forever. With the entire theater holding its breath, Margaret pressed play. The sound quality wasn't professional, it was clearly recorded in a bedroom, probably on a phone or simple device. But what came through the speakers was unmistakable. A young voice, rich with emotion and technical skill, singing Imagine, by John Lennon. But this wasn't just a cover. David had arranged it himself, adding harmonies and subtle changes that made it entirely his own. His voice carried the kind of vulnerability and hope that can't be taught or manufactured. It was the voice of someone who believed in the power of music to change hearts. As the recording played, Simon closed his eyes and listened with the intensity of someone receiving a sacred gift. When David's voice reached the line, "You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one," Simon's composure finally broke completely. The song ended, and the theater remained silent for what felt like an eternity. When Simon finally opened his eyes, he looked directly at Margaret. "He was ready," he said simply. "He was more than ready." Simon turned to address the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand what just happened here. We didn't just hear a young singer. We heard an artist who understood that music isn't about showing off, it's about connecting human souls." He walked back to the judges' panel, but instead of sitting down, he placed his hand on the golden buzzer. "Margaret," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater, "I can't bring David back. I can't give him the audition he deserved. But I can do something else." He looked directly into the main camera. "David Chen, wherever you are, this is for you." Simon Cowell pressed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti filled the air as the audience rose to their feet in thunderous applause. But all eyes were on Simon, who stood motionless, his hands still on the buzzer, tears streaming down his face. Margaret collapsed into sobs, not of sadness, but of overwhelming gratitude. Through her tears she mouthed the words, "Thank you." As the confetti settled and the applause gradually faded, Simon walked back to Margaret one final time. "I want you to have something," he said, pulling a business card from his pocket and writing something on the back. "This is my personal number. If you ever need anything at all, you call me." "And Margaret?" "Yes?" "Your son was wrong about one more thing. He didn't need to wait to make me smile. He did that 8 months ago, the moment he wrote that letter. I just didn't know it yet." The cameras captured Margaret clutching the business card to her heart, the same hand that had carried her son's letter for 8 months. But this story doesn't end with the golden buzzer. 6 months later, Simon Cowell established the David Chen Memorial Scholarship for young performers who demonstrate exceptional character alongside their talent. The scholarship isn't awarded based on skill level, but on the applicant's understanding of what it means to be a true artist. Margaret serves on the selection committee. Every year, she reads applications from young people who write about their dreams, their struggles, and their understanding of the responsibility that comes with artistic gifts. And every year, on the anniversary of David's death, Simon Cowell posts a simple message on his social media. "Some dreams transcend death. Thank you, David, for reminding me why we do this." The letter that David wrote sits framed in Simon's office, not as a trophy, but as a daily reminder that behind every harsh critique is a desire to help people reach their highest potential. And sometimes, just sometimes, the most important lessons come from those who are no longer here to teach them. Margaret never auditioned for America's Got Talent again. She didn't need to. She had already given the most perfect performance in the show's history, not with her voice, but with her heart. And sometimes, that's exactly what the world needs to hear.